beginner's guide to mixing metal at home with me, James MSV, and this is episode 5, part 2, which is covering mastering again. Before we go any further, I just want to clarify something about mastering. If you didn't see episode 1, there's a lot of leeway as to what someone might mean when they talk about mastering a track at home, especially when you're just using the digital domain. For a detailed explanation of my view on this and quite what I mean, please see part 1. It's right at the beginning. Just to summarise though, when I mention mastering, what I mean is the processes that we apply after the final mix to just try and make it sound better. I'm well aware that strictly by the true sense of the word it isn't mastering, but that's how everyone refers to it, so that's what we're doing. Okay, so wherever possible, and in part 1 of episode 5, I've tried to use stock or free VSTs in the mixing and mastering process. But the undeniable truth is that in a lot of cases the expensive products, or ones you just have to pay for, are priced like that for a reason, and that is because they are good and they sound better. Through the mixing process, there are many free VSTs that are available and that I've used that are good, and some of them are as good as the commercial ones, but when it comes to the final mixing and mastering process, this is really where they shine, and where spending a bit of money can give your mix that extra 10% or so that pushes it up into a sort of higher bracket. Unfortunately, just like mastering engineers, the VSTs aimed at home mastering are expensive. So you only really want to be spending this money if you think the end result is worth it, and hopefully by seeing this video you will be able to make that decision for yourself as to whether you think what I can do with using commercial VSTs is better than what I've managed to do with the stock VSTs. Now, I'm going to be using waves. Why waves, really? You may think, well, it's fair to say many home recording people use waves, and they have been around a long time because of two brilliant plugins that they really pioneered, the C4 multiband compressor and the L1 maximizer or ultra maximizer, which really sort of opened up loudness for the home recording enthusiast. These are both two reasonably priced VSTs, and they really raised the bar, so waves sort of came to the fore with that. They do cost a lot of money, so I can't go spending money on UAD products as well and test them for you. I don't have that sort of money, unfortunately. Waves are what I've bought, so waves is what I'm showing you, and really I'm happy with them. They are considered to be one of the best. I mentioned UAD. They're considered, I think, probably to be the best. The trouble with UAD is you need to buy hardware as well before you can use them. You need to spend £1,000 on a dedicated sound card, so that really is out of my reach and out of a lot of people's reach. So for most of us, I think waves is the pinnacle of where we can try and afford or try and reach. They do have their critics. Some people don't like the way they sound. I must admit they aren't particularly transparent. They do sound quite bright, and you have to take that into account when you mix. But it does work for me, and once you're used to them you can get some very good results. So let's get on, and I'll show you what I do. So this isn't going to be massively detailed because my processes are the same as with using stock plugins. I start off, get rid of this just for a second to just remind everybody. Here we have bounce down of each track, so that I haven't got to worry about looking at multiple tracks while I'm doing this tutorial. I've bounced down all the guitars, all the bass, all the drums to their own tracks, so I've only got about 6 tracks to work with. I've bounced or moved everything, routed everything except for the vocals through group 1, where I'm applying some reverb to bind it all together, and I used Cubase's very good reference impulse reverb, which is very good. Here though I have the Waves IRL, which stands for light on the CPU power. This does just pip it in terms of quality, and really with reverb it's something you need to have some experience with. You need to test lots and lots of them, find out which ones do what you want, and the more you listen to reverbs, the more you can start to tell which ones sound a bit cheap. This one certainly doesn't. It's very good. I've got the tail set to about a second. It's quite tight, that one, and it's very, very low in the mix, only a wet 4% to the dry signal. So just to round everything off there. But again, same process as I did with the stock ones. The vocals I've bypassed on group 1 because they've already got some reverb of their own on there. So group 1 we can consider to be the backing track mixed with the vocals. I then routed through group 2, and this is where the Waves products start getting interesting. So you may remember in part 1, the second stage after reverb for me was adding a multiband compressor to round everything off, but there's an extra stage in this when I bring up my waves, and that is the SSL bus compressor. I've now routed the vocals and group 1, which is all of the backing track, through group 2, and all I'm putting on group 2 strip is this SSL bus compressor. SSL are extremely well regarded when it comes to their hardware, and the reason is that they just sound beautiful, and I'm not really doing much with this this bus compressor. All it's really doing is adding the character of the SSL to the mix. It tidies things up just slightly, and it seems to put everything in its place really well, as a good compressor should. And it's one of those instances where on paper you would think, let's not bother with this plugin, we don't need it in the chain, but when you put it in there, it just adds that something special. So let's just have a quick listen. I'm not sure if the compression on YouTube will allow you to hear the subtleties, but we'll give it a go. And if you could notice there, the needle in the display there was really reacting to the kick. It sort of pulls it in nicely and rounds everything off in that low end. It's just a lovely character to it. So really it's there for nothing more than just adding some nice character, and it does it very well. So the SSL is part of a SSL package you can get through Waves, which isn't cheap. I think you're looking at $500 or $600. So maybe not top of your list. This is really to polish things off, but worth putting in there if you've got it. So once I've done the reverb and that compressor, we're on to the final master strip, and this is where I would add then my multiband compressor. Now I used the Cubase stock one in episode 1, or part 1 of this episode. This particular multiband compressor by Waves, the Line MB Linear Phase Multiband, is one of the best plugins they do, and frankly I think if you're going to buy one plugin from this episode, it's got to be this. It beats all other multiband compressors hands down. It's beautiful at separating everything and making it sound clear and punchy. Absolutely brilliant. We'll give a quick listen. It's quite complex to use. I'm going to do a whole tutorial video on how to use this properly, because if you don't, you're really wasting the power of it. So let's just have a hear at what it's done for this mix. Multiband compressor is fairly essential when it comes to the mastering stage, and it's very easy to mess things up. So using this one properly really clears everything up nicely, gets rid of any of the low muddiness. It can be really easy to mess up your mix though, so please do stay tuned for my episode on using this properly to make sure you're getting the most out of it. This on its own I think is about $100, and it's going to be the best money you ever spend on a plugin, I promise you that. It does come as part of the mastering bundle though, which is one thing I've purchased, and all of these plugins on this strip come from that. So you're looking at about $500 for three plugins that we're going to use here. That's well worth the money, and these are the ones you really need to buy if you want to raise the bar. So there's the multiband compressor. The next in the chain for me would be maximizing, and we used the Cubase maximizer before, but see, Waves wrote the book when it comes to maximizing, and you've got two levels of detail we can go out with the mastering bundle. What you choose is really down to what your ears tell you, because they do sound slightly different. If you go for one of the traditional maximizers like this L2 here, you're not going to be disappointed with the extra volume it gives you. As I mentioned before, the downside of a maximizer is that it can excite or enhance undesirable frequencies, in particular those of distorted guitars. So to get around this, you may want to put an EQ in afterwards, which we're going to come to shortly. First, a very quick look at this L2. This could be used as the last bit in the chain, because the out ceiling can be used as a limiter, as you can see here. Always set it to minus 0.1, that's fairly standard. And then the threshold here, easiest way of looking at this is basically lowering this threshold by a certain amount of dB is what it's going to raise your overall volume by. And I never tend to go above 4 or 5, because you then start to get some nasty clipping and strange artifacts occurring. But I promise you, up to 4 or 5 dB extra volume is a lot. I mean, if we give this a go. Now, I mean, that's just a marked difference, and it's something you're never going to achieve without the use of something like a maximizer. So well worth buying one of these. And we'll come back to the second option for maximizing in a bit. Parametric EQs. These, as I think I've mentioned in previous episodes, you need to get your hands on a decent quality one to help you identify rogue frequencies that you want to maybe get rid of using an analyzer, as I showed you in part 1. The reason you want to spend your money on one like this Waves linear phase EQ and not just go out and get a free one is because EQs are actually lying about what they're telling you here. What you're seeing on the graph is not what you're actually getting when it comes to EQ. If you raise a peak, it has a detrimental effect on the frequencies around it. It may raise or lower other frequencies, and Waves obviously know about this, and they've developed this technology, the linear phase. What they're meaning by that is it's their technology they've put into this EQ to prevent any of these artifacts and makes it sound exceptionally clean. And so I've used it just to clean up a tiny bit, especially with the maximizer where it's added in some high end there, which I wanted to pull back a bit. That is as simple as that when it comes to EQ. I've whacked then a final limiter in to make sure I'm just not going above the minus 0.1. I don't need to, I'm sure, go into that any further. But back to the maximizer. Free VSTs and using commercial VSTs when it comes to the final master. And really for this bundle that I've got on the final strip with the multiband, the maximizers, and they're really good anti-phase EQ, you're looking at about £500. It's well worth the money, and especially for this linear phase multiband. As I say, I'm going to be doing a new tutorial just on this one thing to make sure you can use it properly, because if you don't, you're really wasting your money, and if you do, it's going to transform your mix wonderfully. So that really concludes everything that I have to say on this episode, and it concludes the entire series. Thanks to everybody who's left comments and questions. I've also learnt some stuff from some of you guys over the past few months, so grateful for that. And keep your eye out on the channel. There will be some more videos coming up, hopefully answering questions that have come up in this and going into some more techniques in more detail. Thanks very much.